Hello, everyone. This is Shalene Michelle Tate, MBA, host of your Fostered My Stories podcast, the achievement focused podcast for the foster adoption, orphan, and marginalized communities. I'm so excited to be here with my guest, Miss Dusti Stark, who is a clinical social worker. She is Miss Lone Star State 2023 and 2024. Congratulations, Miss Dusty. And how are you doing today? I'm just so excited you're here.
Yes, I'm doing fabulous. Excited to do this with you, Shalina.
Thank you. Thank you. And I also am excited because Betsy is also a returning guest. I'm so honored to have her. Shout out to Mr. Dwayne Stark, her husband, dynamic duo, power couple who's doing phenomenal things. They are foster adoptive parents. They are change leaders in their communities. And I could go on, but I'm super excited. I'm going to just start it off by allowing Dusty to really share with you, listeners, about her current successes, and then we're going to go from there.
All right. Well, I'm excited to be talking about just overcoming trauma, building resilience, renewing your mind, because it ties into my history and then what's taken me to where I am. And a lot of the hard things that I walked through in childhood really are what were sparkling moments now, as I call them, looking back, that put me on a track to now have the family that I do and becoming a foster and adoptive parent. And so I just also like to share the value. Sometimes we don't see it when we're going through the experiences that we're going through, and they can be really painful, but it can also highlight maybe what is that passion, what is that purpose for you. And so that's really been a lot of the work that I've been doing from past to bring me to current.
Yes. And thank you, Dusty, for really tying in how that past and dealing with that is now leading you to your current as far as being a consultant and dealing with trauma and really helping others as well deal with trauma. And now you're paying it forward even more in your family dynamic. So I want to give a shout out to It's Already Done Ministries, Sister Supporting Sisters, if you're watching from there, from the Foster My Stories Facebook page or on YouTube. Welcome, everybody. Shout out to Dr. Kaiser, who is in the comment section. Welcome to the live. Yes, and we're super excited to have you here. Dusty, yes, please tell us as well, like your past. We know that is a vital reason. Could you take us to your childhood as it relates to what from your past, whether your childhood or as you were a grown adult, what allowed you to really have the unction to know that, you know what, I want to help people in this area, even though you may have yourself going through that and experience that with family, friends, associations. How did you get to the point of, you know what, I want to help others?
Yeah. So my childhood, early years, I had both my parents and lived with my older brother, and things started going off track, but I didn't necessarily realize that because I was going to my grandparents most weekends. So my parents were very young. My mom and dad had my brother when they were 16 and then 19 when they had me. So they were still kind of growing up themselves and wanting to do the fun things that a lot of their friends were doing. So in a nutshell, they got caught in addiction, and that led to a series of events, as you could imagine, but whether it was criminal stuff, jail time, all of it. And so eventually, after we tried living back and forth with grandparents, I had a sister that was 11 years younger than I am enter the world, and then things kind of moved in a different direction from that point, where she ended up entering foster care at 3. And so that's really, I guess, in a nutshell, there's a lot of components to my childhood, but in a nutshell, what led me into the whole idea of fostering and adoption is that here I see my sister, who by no fault of her own enters into a situation where she's needing people to care for her. And given my grandparents' circumstances, my grandma had some medical stuff going on and was already raising my brother and I, and we were much older. It just ended up that as they had talked about it and tried to look at what was best for my sister ended up being adopted by a non-relative foster family. And so she was raised by that family. So we mostly just saw each other on holidays, and not until college did I see her kind of more often. But we're still connected and very grateful for open adoption because of
Yes.
our relationship and so many overlapping unique things, and sisters that, there's that whole nature versus nurture thing, which I just think is really interesting when I connected to my sister, how much we had in common, even though we weren't raised in the same home. So little shout
Yes.
out to siblings staying connected and how beautiful that is. But yeah, so
Yes.
that's really what gave me a heart for fostering, is my sister entering care. And then I really wanted to be able to care for those that by no fault of their own just needed a safe place to land, people to love
Yes.
on them.
Dusty, thank you for really being so vulnerable and sharing that experience. I can only imagine it was hard, really kind
Mm,
of watching that from your perspective, seeing your sister having to make that transition there. And like you said, it was no fault of anybody's. It's just life circumstances. And but I'm grateful to hear that you were able to kind of take that now and just embrace that and realize that there's families out here that has that similar need of really needing somebody to kind of stand in the gap for them. And
mhm.
then sometimes that may very well be a non-relative family member, but I'm grateful to hear as well that your situation was an open adoption or open fostering situation where
Yeah.
because so many are closed and so many siblings get lost. So to hear that there was still a connection there. Dusty, I'm going to now, yes, go into, so you're basically, growing up, you're staying in contact, you're having really being able to connect with the family. Um, when you get to the point of your sister in college, how was that for her? Was that okay? I'm ready to emancipate out and move on with my life, or was that like a, you know, um, her experience was okay and she was able to move forward, or was that also part of the needing to deal with trauma and heal from there?
Yeah, I honestly, I feel like it's her story as far as her transition into adulthood, but I do feel like um, the part that I think is key is just to be able to have as many healthy connections in your life as possible, because she had adoptive connections, but also when they're healthy birth connections as well, it can only add. And so for her situation, she did go ahead and graduate high school. She went on and got a master's degree. Actually, she's also a licensed clinical social worker.
Yes.
And I hope that she does get her book out. She's talking about writing a book as well. And so she can share her own experience about those things. But it's been a process, as anyone that's gone through foster care, adoption, and a lot of the identity components and trying to make sense of when bad things did happen, and I'm no different in that way, having primarily been raised with grandparents, but I bounced around with friends and some different sorts of situations. And so sometimes you have different examples and you're trying to process, what is normal, what's okay, and even what do I want out of my life. And so that's
Yeah.
where I take my past. A lot of those that I called sparkling moments are really the things that separated me to go, maybe, this is worth working for. This is
Yes.
worth choosing a life of sobriety and showing up for your kids and doing these things that actually they're very joy filled
Yeah.
things. But and so I got a lot of lessons from seeing also what not to do. So
Yes. Yes. Thank you for sharing that, Dusty. And speaking of what not to do and just really paying it forward back from the lessons that you learned, I want to go into your website, Extending Grace, your whole website, and really just what you do on a regular basis with Mr. Stark. Dynamic, like I said, dynamic services and just projects and different things that you're working on. Extended Grace is a consulting service, and I'm going to just read some here. Dusty, for those of you watching, she is a wife, mother, model, author. We're going to get into her books. She's a public speaker. And like I said earlier on this live, she's both the 2023-2024 USA Ambassador Lone Star Queen. How do you feel, Dusty, about just being able to like step into, because I've been seeing the photos and I'm just so happy for you. I'm so grateful to see that you are really being able to make a difference even in that arena with the youth. Shout out to our friend, Michelle Williams as well, a fellow leader that's doing those works as well. How was that stepping into that arena and then now having your daughters and young girls looking up to you as far as just being able to um, develop and to grow?
I would never have imagined doing this. I never went to a pageant growing up. I personally wasn't connected to any queens that came out to my school or anything like that. So to tell you the truth, it was really Cheryl Williams that inspired me to move this direction, because she said, you know, you wouldn't believe, but the pageant opened up a platform for me where I was able to use my crown like a microphone and spread a message. And so that's what drew me into the pageantry world, is seeing that these women are using it for impact. It's
Yes.
much more than like this beauty thing, right?
Yes.
It's all about community service, having impact, and being able to use the different things. I think for me too, as a operating in the world, I guess, as a queen, has been really interesting, because I didn't have a lot of those early lessons, like how to sit, how to eat, how to talk, like all this stuff that people talk about, manners and etiquette. Like I was the other kid that ran around barefoot, like eating the things. And I mean, I'm like, it's actually laughable, because I actually taught the etiquette course and manners at Princess Day, and wanted to share these things because there are things that I didn't have growing up, and didn't have those limits and boundaries. And my family is just very laid back, you know, don't worry, keep the shoes on, we don't care, you know, that's just the way we operated. We lived in the country. So but to be able to model, really it's about respecting others and seeing our impact in the world, is thinking about how we make other people feel also, in the way we dress and the way that we talk and the way that we have manners sitting amongst people. And so I think it's just been interesting to be put into that place as trying to be an example for others. And ultimately, it's one that I feel like, okay, Lord, right, that you need to guide me in this and lead me in this, because it wasn't something that I was raised in per se. And so I've been learning a lot over these last couple of years in the pageantry world from a lot of these other powerhouse women that have these skills and have been passing those on to me.
Yes, that in itself is just a remarkable testimony of just, you know, you've been given grace to be in those arenas and to really learn from those other leaders like yourself. But I thank you also for your transparency and really saying that that was not your background, and how, like many of us, you know, you didn't mind, you know, going bare feet and just kind of like being free. And so I believe that also makes you very relatable, just like Cheryl Williams. People are able to connect with your story, your testimony, and also see that your heart is in the now. You and the other leaders that's in the industry that you're connected with is for the now. It's for the reform, and it's also for making a difference. So once again, I commend you, Dusty, on your strides in that area, and I'm so excited to really continue to see your development and your growth as you continue to just um, change the world, because that's what you're doing. One child, one family at a time. I want to get into this dynamic service because you have a few services, like several services. I'm going to go down the list of just the strides you're making. Oh, Dr. Kaiser. Let's see. I'm not on the regular Facebook page right now, but Dr. Kaiser says she enjoys the Princess Day with you. So the Princess Day you did with Cheryl, I wish I could pull that picture up right now.
Yeah.
Yes, so listeners, there was um, a phenomenal Princess Day that Dusty did with Cheryl Williams. As a matter of fact, let me go there to the link of the building, because I want to talk about your awesome um, building that you have and your fostering bridges community and strides that you have. So listeners, fostering bridges, I'm gonna let Dusty get into this phenomenal service, but fostering bridges is a dynamic community service that helps to meet families and youth right where they are. They also have a dynamic center that's right there in Bullard, Texas. So if you are near Bullard, Texas, or would like to visit Bullard, Texas, please, please, please reach out to the Starks for opportunities on networking as far as utilization of the building, and maybe bringing your service there, bringing your youth event there, bringing really efforts on partnership and sponsorship to these efforts. But Dusty, could you please let the listeners know, how did Fostering Bridges come about, and the strides you are currently making with Fostering Bridges?
Yes, absolutely. I feel like we were coming to Texas with this idea. We were going to create content and primarily spread awareness of the needs of foster youth, adoption, and all of that. But then coming here, we started learning some of the statistics around here. We have about 1,200 children in East Texas that are in care. And in our own county, there's only 15 foster homes. And so
Wow.
60%, actually over 60%, are being sent out of county. And so if you imagine not only being pulled from your parents, but now you're being pulled from your school and any other outlets. And so that just struck us as, okay, no, there's a lot more to do here in this community than to just be spreading awareness. And so we're shifting that awareness to local first. We're trying to do some of the other things that we had set out to do as well with Fostering Bridges. Though I do feel like we need to make a big impact kind of where we live right now. And so
Yes.
what we've been doing is just looking at how do we show up in East Texas as the community and getting the community engaged into the foster care system. And that doesn't necessarily mean becoming a foster parent or an adoptive parent, though we need that, but even being a certified babysitter, helping pack bags, aging out youth kind of needs, different things that people can do to come alongside some of the events you were mentioning, Princess Day. We also have a boys event coming up at the end of June. And so there's things that we can plug people in, whether it's just coming and helping for a day or having ongoing. Of course, we're always looking for the monthly donors because then we can plan for things that we can continue affording them. So right now we actually have sponsored 6 months of duffel bags. We call them journey bags, but for youth that are transitioning either from one home to another or out of care. So we've been able to do that because we had a sponsorship, but it's really the ongoing funds that allow us to continue providing those sorts of services in our community. And so we are doing that for Region 4, which is our community right now. But that gives a little bit of, actually, as you're scrolling there, it says fill out the interest form. It has a whole list of different ways that you can get involved in this ministry. And some of them, you don't have to live locally. We could use remote supports with different sorts of things as well. We're trying to just get the word out. Media and different events and things will be very helpful for Fostering Bridges to be able to grow. And so really, it comes down to getting everyone involved in whatever capacity that they feel led. And so we can change these numbers and that it won't be the statistics that they are.
Yes.
These are people. These are our children. These are our families and our communities. So,
Man, Dusty, just to hear really the reality of for that area, you said 15 families. Did I say that right?
yes,
15
in Cherokee
families?
County, there are 15 foster homes. And the statistics are about 50% of first-time foster parents drop out in the first year.
Oh my
So if
God.
we don't get the support to those families, which is why we started doing our neighbor, and that's
Yeah.
through churches and things where they can adopt a family within their church to be that support system where they can do the meal train, they can deliver. Maybe there's a placement and they need a car seat or they need, different things like that where they can show up tangibly for that family.
Yes. Um, wow. And that is a really topic there as far as reform, talk about reform. We need more, like you said, awareness to the fact that, hey, this area needs help. And like you said, having to remove the youth and send them somewhere else. Now, there's some cases where, that's in the best interest for the child involved, but for other cases, especially when it comes to trying to reunify a family and reunification, it makes it harder, especially if you're trying to do visits between the foster adoptive area or really the care provider. So if you're listening, um, as maybe a social worker, maybe an advocate, maybe you're an agency representative, we would like to implore you to reach out to Dusty, dustystark.com. Get on this page right here where I'm at. It's a form that you can come to. You can fill out your information, fill out, who you are with. If you're interested in being a partner or a sponsor, I really uh, invite you on my end to see how you can help this amazing organization that is really helping to provide a bridge. That's really what they're doing. They're helping to provide a bridge that's not there. The bridge is connecting these families, these youth, really to be able to progress the area forward. Um, Dusty, what is that town that's next to you? It's just like a city, and
Yeah,
it's like
Tyler, Texas is.
Tyler's, Texas. Yes.
Mhm.
Anybody from Tyler's, Texas,
Yep.
if you are watching or listening or watching the replay, please reach out to the Starks. They could use your support. Really, I believe that area has helpful resources like the Bear Foundation. Also, Dusty, I want to connect them to you. I know they are on board with really seeing how they can help you in your area. So I'm definitely going to see if they could get directly connected with you and Mr. Stark to progress those efforts as well. Because sometimes, yeah, we just need to get the right people to connect to your efforts. And you're doing phenomenal. You and Mr.
Thank
Stark, you're
you.
doing
I would
phenomenal.
just also say we're trying to target the rural areas because in Tyler, they have some things like the Fostering Collective and different ones. So I actually have expanded some of the services and partnered with Fostering Collective. Now I'm doing the Fostering Collective Mom Support Group for my area in Cherokee County so that I
Nice.
can connect with those ladies because they've already got the curriculums in place and all of that. So our goal isn't to reinvent a wheel or to
Yes.
in ourselves, have to be the agency, but more to figure out what's already happening and where the gaps are so that we can fill those things in. And if there's a clothing closet, like there's Annie's closet and there's different things like that, we don't want to redo that. We want to do the other sorts of things that the community needs. So I would
Yes.
just, encourage anyone in this area too, in East Texas, if you have ideas, experiences, those sorts of things, I would love you to fill out the interest form for me to connect and to talk to you about what those exact things are, because we're just 2 years into this community. And so we're still getting to know as everything's been privatized here in East Texas with child welfare as well. So it's really moved away from, it typically would have intake and then they move through and they have their ongoing worker and their permanency worker. Well, things have shifted where after jurisdiction, they're now in an agency and
Oh,
there's, 15 or so different agencies and they all run a little bit differently. So that can be a little bit challenging too, just getting to know systems and newer agencies and expectations. And I guess my concern is that we do hold these agencies accountable locally to be able to call out, hey, this is
yeah.
how it's working, this is how it's not. And so we can be an outside resource of advocacy as well. That's
Yes.
not federally funded. We're not involved with the child welfare system in those senses. And so I guess I just throw that out too, that we are a support to people
Yeah.
walking this path in the
Yeah.
fostering adoption world.
Yes. Yes. And thank you for also highlighting that as well, Dusty, about just the real struggles as far as being able to connect the right way, especially when there's stuff that has, like you said, it's been privatized. And, of course, every agency is different and that could bring barriers. But we are also, oh, and thank you for sharing your link in the description as well. Uh, but you're right. It's just about a matter of getting the right support that can meet you right where you are, outside of politics, outside of
Mhm.
stipulations. Because, like you said, the clothing closet, the food banks, you know, um, any of those resources, back to school, just anything that could be helpful, especially to that area where it's so needed. Um, so, yes, if you're watching, uh, please reach out as soon as possible. DustyStark.com. Dusty, I want to get into also the reason of your writings that you've done. You are a fellow author with the Faces of Foster Care, volumes 2 and 3. Am I saying that right?
Correct.
Okay, I'm about to pull it up right now. But also, I want to get into your dynamic book right here. Let me go back to it. So excited. Um, there we go. All right. Tell us about your book, Legacy of Love. How did that stirring to write this book get started? And before you get into it, I just want to give a shout out to these comments. Dr. John Negramo, he's awesome. He says in today's world, 5 million children experience domestic violence or abuse in their homes each year. Legacy of Love by Dusty Stark is an important book as it brings awareness to the plight of children in crisis. He recommends it to anyone, and I also do as well, to basically read this and to get a closer view in respects to Dusty, really what she's saying there. And then Cheryl, what a diverse and informative perspective that you, Dusty, have in foster care realm. Let us know about how did this stir for you in writing it? What particularly what's the most important thing? I know there's so many points that you could cover, but what is the main thing that you want anyone listening to be able to take away from the efforts of this book? What is the reform? What is the I'm gonna let you talk. What is the overall message with Legacy of Love? Because that's a legacy writing. That's the love writing in this
Mm.
book. I see you have the tree, and I could go into that. I see the branches and the roots, but I'm gonna let you talk.
Yeah, honestly, this is my own journey of healing through a lot of the pain that I lived. And I'm hoping, well, my heart in it is I feel like God doesn't just put us through pain for pain's sake, but that we are to use those things, that there's value somehow in those things, and that in this journey, I feel like I didn't realize it from a young age. I was a counselor. My family tells me I would string the phone into the bathroom and they'd be knocking, but it was like my phone booth so that I could have privacy. And I was helping all my friends. And so it's funny, I've kind of always had that heart for when people are going through things, that I wanted to walk with them and support them. And I can really understand, because of a lot of what I've lived, that
Yes.
I can I can see the impacts of trauma and pain and how that can come out in somebody's everyday experience. And
Yeah.
so a lot of the ways that I operated in childhood, I think I tried to unpack in Legacy of Love to help others see children are children, and they may have had specific experiences, but really the experience itself may have been abnormal, but the response was normal in the abnormalcy of the event, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
kind
Yeah.
of what happens is trauma, there's this need behind a behavior. And so some of the things I've touched on before, but there's been neglect situations where maybe somebody's smelling everything before they eat it. Well, if you had to smell every bottle to see which one was okay to drink, then
Yeah.
that doesn't look strange to smell
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
We've talked about hoarding food and things like that. If you've gone without food for a period of time, you might stockpile food because that's a survival instinct. And so a lot of
Yes.
these sorts of things I just think are important, and why I wanted to highlight some of the behaviors in my own childhood and some of the experiences I had is because I really looked like a bad kid to a lot of people, probably. I didn't necessarily care about school. My middle school years were pretty tumultuous. I uh, tried different kinds of drugs. I did all kinds of things. And honestly, this is the first time maybe I spoke that out loud because of shame, that you carry stuff. But I
Yeah.
wanted to understand why my parents were addicted. I wanted to feel different than I felt. A lot of those kinds of things are just coping skills, and they're unhealthy coping skills. But when you don't have the network of support, or you don't have healthy coping skills built in,
Yes.
then you kind of do from that place. And
Yeah.
so when I'm looking at this book, it's really a place of, uh, I guess, forgiving myself also in the journey, where I've held a lot of shame around different behaviors and things that I've done, and really just had to lay it all down at the cross and say, okay, God, you can use all things, even these really ugly parts of myself or my
Yes.
history, that you can use these things. And I want to help other people unpack their shame and trauma so that they're not carrying it around and masking it and trying to cover it up with some unhealthy kind of ways, so that they
Yeah.
can have a life abundant, which I feel like God has called us all to, is life
Yes.
abundant.
Yes. Dusty, thank you so much for being so transparent as for as really the stuff you said. You was a transparent about, hey, I did drugs. I kind of saw my parents and what they was doing, and the reality, like you said, is a lot of times stuff is a coping mechanism. Even things we may not be aware that we're doing, it may have been picked up and adopted from maybe childhood. Um, a lot of things, one thing may not be the only thing. Like in my case, the root rejection, which a lot of youth deal with as it relates to foster care, if not dealt with the right way, with the right people, or really just being able to have a support group or connections, then it could lead to other unhealthy, like you said, unhealthy ways of coping. And so thank you once again for just being so transparent about once again life. And, and I'm so grateful that, you felt led to express that now and today. And I want you to know that on Foster My Stories podcast, you never have to feel ashamed about anything related to your past, your present, and possibly your future, because this is where we can, together as sisters, as supporting sisters, be able to express these things and, support each other, and to hopefully, in what everything we're saying, be able to help others who may be watching and listening, or know somebody who may need that similar support. So thank you, thank you, thank you
Absolutely.
for just sharing and being open to share. And speaking of the fact that you like to help people, I want to go into your Ladies Without Limits. And the unique service that this is a 6-session coaching program to transform women into ladies without limits. You go into just the different steps, really dealing with the past, um, just dealing with. I'm reading some right here. You will learn how to move past your past, silence the critic within. Oh, yes, that critic is so huge and can be so huge if not dealt with. I love how you really highlight living unapologetically, which is so important because we're in a society now where it's like everybody wants to, you know, just the approval of everybody. And I know for years for myself, that was a thing. I'm just now getting and growing to a place of, you know what, like you said, you find your purpose, your divine purpose, and really that's more important, your divine purpose and who you're being called to be and how you're being called to serve. And ultimately, that's really what it is. Like session 3, pack your bags. Yes, I'm okay. I'm gonna just say this since Miss Rosenreiter and Dr. Kay Kaiser, encouraged me to continue to get on a plane, and I finally did. Um, the last time was back when I was a teenager, but I never flew by myself. Let me say it that way. I never flew by myself. But when they encouraged me to do it, and once I did it, I am like a little kid now. I had to get over that hurdle of flying by myself.
Yeah.
Um, and once I did, it's like I want to travel all the time. Okay, so I
Yeah.
love this.
Good for you. See, facing your fears. That's actually a
Basic.
part of this is how do we then take that and transform, because there are those things that come up. The security may be shaken. You might feel your foundation is actually cracked, when you have experienced abuse, neglect, a lot of trauma, then it makes sense. A lot of that can come out in fears because it
Yeah.
was valid for you.
Yes, so true. And that's when I saw the pack your bags. Is I got excited because I was like, yeah, want to continue doing that, packing my bags, and also, yeah, just continue to be transformed in really our thinking. So thank you for this service right here, Dusty. Listeners, if you are watching and you wanted to connect with her, please do so on the site dustystark.com, and book your sessions and see how you can go through these steps as well. Also, feel free to connect with Dusty in her other services she has right here. She has um, some resources that can help you right where you are. Let me go to that tab as well. Um, right here, The Legacy of Love. I love how she has a signed paperback copy you can get. And I encourage you to get that from her. It's signed. And please support, support, support. Also has a Legacy of Love Fostering Children PDF download. And then I love how you have postpartum depression, Dusty, and just, meeting the listeners and the audience right where they are. You have some YouTube videos of breathing exercises. So, yeah, managing an emotional roller coaster of foster care. It's so true. 5 healthy coping skills. You can find all this right here on her resources tab of the dustystark.com. So, Dusty, could you also kind of give us like an insight of when you had the opportunity to write for the Faces of Foster Care volumes 2 and 3? How was that experience, being able to really um, dive into that, because the anthology is an anthology and you're writing with other authors like myself on, just something that is so precious and
Mhm.
but is needed to be talked about
Mhm.
for both of your entries. How was that for you? And then, you know, was there anything you had to face in order to write, or was there excitement for people to know? How was that process for you on both
Absolutely.
occasions?
I would say the first volume, the volume 2 that I submitted for, was more of a painful process, because anytime I'm relaying things around childhood events, especially around my sister, I've held a lot of emotion about that. And so, also kind of being unashamed here, I will say I did seek out some EMDR, which is the eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy, because my emotion has been so high around that. And even though I can talk kind of like this about it at this point, I've done so much writing and so much processing of these events with family and with friends, and also now with some counseling sorts of things. And so I think that's something that I just want to comment, that this is part of that healing, is being able to share our stories, and it opens up so others can feel free to do that too, because
Yes.
we all have our own blocks to sharing painful events and
Yes.
not wanting to relive them. I mean, even as a counselor, I don't want to take somebody into a painful event if they don't feel like it's affecting their life and their functioning day to day, then they don't need to always go back and relive that.
Yes.
At the same time, there are times that we kind of have to, in order to make sense of it, and in order to get a hold of, like, whenever I smell the smell, it takes me to this place, or every time that I go here, to a store or something, all my body's freaking out. I have to leave early. I can't get my groceries. When it's interfering with your functioning on a day-to-day basis, that's when it's like, okay, this isn't okay. You need to get some support with that. And that shouldn't be a stigmatized thing. It's
Yeah.
a process of healing and being able to unpack really painful things that have happened. And so I've been doing that work, in walking that for many, many years. As I'm a counselor, I feel like I have to also walk the walk. If I'm asking other people to share all of these things and do all that work, I need to have done mine in order to sit with my own stuff and help them with theirs. And so, anyway, so writing is just another form of healing, and also helping others to share their own story and overcome their own painful pasts, and to
Yes.
be able to connect to, I feel like, again, like I said, the abundant living, because I feel like there's a difference when you're in scarcity and fear and
Mhm.
operating from that mindset of trauma, versus having a greater faith, trust, which is very difficult to get from fear to faith, right? Or
Yeah.
fear to trust. And so that's kind of part of this transformation, is to be able to make sense of those things, so then you can build that again and
Yes.
have what fullness God has for you. So that's what these point back to, is renewing the mind, being able to heal from the past, and see how God can use that in your future.
Yes. And I agree with everything you just said. That is so true, Dusty, because really finding really what God's saying and helping us find our healing. And I know for me, I've said that I didn't discover until maybe 2016. I kept questioning what my purpose was. And I kind of got the overwhelming divine revelation to it that it was my past is part of my future, but mostly to not only for myself find healing, but to also help those like much like yourself. You are, and once again, hats off to you. You are a clinical social worker, so you are in a counselor, so you're able to then help on an in-depth level uh, for individuals to be able to talk to you and you meet them right where they are. I'm grateful to say that I had a season of being able to assist with first generation college freshmen. So, in a way, that in itself kind of took me back as well. For, I was also in their shoes at one point, a
Mhm.
freshman or coming into a college setting and needing that support. So, I saw how all of that tied in, and you made a valid point of how really in order for us to help others and stuff, we also are, progressing ourselves, getting ourselves situated and really being all we can for who we would like to help as well.
Mhm.
So yes, Dusty, thank you for just really sharing how the volume two was really the starting point for you of just dealing with that, reality. And then of course, volume three carries forth those testimonies for
Mhm.
each of us. All right. Well, Dusty, do you have any events coming up that you would like the audience to know about that they can definitely support you? I know you said that you have an event for the males, like the youth. Can you tell us more about that and anything else you have coming up so we can support or the people in your area can support?
Yes. So my husband's going to be leading the boys event, and that'll be June 29th. And I think he titled it um, Battle Brothers Living for the King, I think is what it is. So
Oh, yay.
they're some form of, nonviolent shooting. I don't know what that is. some some things that they'll get to just play around together, and they'll have different speakers and things is the plan. And I, in general, will just say a lot of our goals right now have been partnering. So we've been talking with 4 Kids for Families, and then Kay Kaiser, we're looking at doing some aging out kind of stuff. We have 21 youth aging out in our area that are graduating high school. So we're trying to see how do we support them. And so we're going to do $50
Yes.
gift cards for each youth,
Nice.
and also looking for our community to come alongside with those things. Because again, we can only give as we are able to give. And so we have committed to that, and also looking at how do we get them, potentially the luggage and pack that with some useful things for them as they're transitioning into their adulthood is on the horizon, because May 31st is graduation. So those couple things are coming to mind right now, but there are lots of things I'm doing on a regular basis. Like I'm going to speak with the CASA on the
Yay.
17th of June. I'm looking for different things. I was at the college recently sharing about foster care and being a vulnerable population in the academic system and different things like that. So I'm just looking for speaking opportunities as well. Anyone that would like to have more awareness built in their industry, their organization, academics, open to coming out and being a guest speaker with all of the above.
Yes. And once again, listeners, that is definitely something I'm rooting for Dusty as well. Please feel free to come once again to her website and you can get her media kit downloads. She has a wealth of information here where you can contact her. You could book her for her modeling. You could book her as a speaker, as an author. You could book her on her services, her unique services that she's doing, whether it's the consulting, the efforts with the Kids Uganda. Did I say that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Kids Uganda, phenomenal services that's helping those youth that are also in those similar situations of fostering, adopting, even though they're overseas, they still need the support as well, right where they are, on higher education and resources and things that can meet them right where they are. So just to know that fostering and adopting, that's a global thing
Mm-hmm.
that will always need global support. And then even where Dusty is right now in her efforts, um, definitely need support to just bring more awareness and more support to those families that are serving. And like Dusty said earlier, if you do not feel like you want to be a foster parent, you can also be something called kinship care. Well, excuse me, if there's somebody in your family that's affected by potentially being fostered or adopted, as a qualified family member, you can get with your local agency and consider kinship care. That way, your relative will not get removed from the home. There's also respite care, where your home could be a temporary placement to help those youth that's kind of transitioning in and out, whether they're about to go into short term or long term care, a therapeutic foster placement, or maybe you could be a CASA advocate, like Dusty was saying, she's going to speak to the CASA representatives. Those are the court appointed advocates that really speak to the judge and mediate on the behalf of the youth. So, in any way, or advocacy, any way you feel you can help, or maybe your organization can help, feel free to once again contact Dusty, dustystark.com, and reach out with her on her media kit and get her in your conferences, get her in your retreats, get her on your cruise ships, get her everywhere, right? Because she has a wealth of knowledge and can really help you on multiple areas of interest. All right. Well,
And just to
Dusty,
clarify a little bit too, I'll just throw out for kids, that ministry stands for Kids in Desperate Situations. So in Uganda, what had originally started out, they were seeking children that were in need of care because they weren't able to attend school. They have different sorts of fees that they have to pay in order to do that. And then there were other medical needs and physical needs that were really prevalent. And so what they did is they formed this ministry. And so the children actually live in the community, but they've either lost one or both parents. And so it's ultimately orphan care in that way, and trying to make sure that they do have basic needs met, able to go to school. And for one child, it may be rice and beans and, certain things like that. For another child, it may be a malaria med. And so that's part of that ministry, is being able to be boots on the ground and see what is actually needed and how to apply funds appropriately to each specific child. So I just want to give a little bit of shout out for that. It's actually connected to our previous church, River Valley Community Church in Grants Pass, before we moved to Texas, but still very dear to our heart. And so Tom Criswell is the head of that. And I'm more just a spokesmodel for it because I believe in it and we support it as well. And my husband's been out there multiple times to see how the funds are used. So this is one of those things that we can attest to. Yes, it's actually getting used the way that it's intended to get used for. And so I love to shout out for those sorts of ministries that we can see direct impact being made.
Yes, thank you for expounding on that, Dusty, because that's also important as well. Being able to pour back into those places, those ministries, those organizations that are actually, putting those funds to use, being able to actually help provide the resources for those in need. So thank you as well for being a spokesmodel for them as well, because that is an extensive service of what you are currently doing.
And it's kidsinuganda.org, if anybody wants to look it up.
Okay, you said kidsinuganda.org?
Correct.
Okay. Let's see if I pull it up as well. Okay, there we go. I'm going to put that in the messenger as well. Thank you for that, Dusty. And yes, please, once again, so if you are a organization, also on that website, there's a section for nonprofits and just organizations that may want to support. You can go there, you can sign up on their form and provide your information, and for them to contact you on the next steps of how you can be of support. Yes, Dr. Kaiser, yes, we need she needs her book signed, and her book is phenomenal. Your book is phenomenal. So she needs her book signed from you, Dusty. So yes, as soon as possible. Yes, so you can sign your book. And we appreciate you, Dusty. You've already said so many, nuggets of wisdom, but before we go, is there anything left or anything that you would like to highlight for listeners to take with them?
Yeah, I think in general, I just wanted to throw out there's a holistic healing part of all of this. And we know there's physical things like nutrition, movement, water, sleep, all these sorts of things, as well as mental. We can talk about what the thoughts are and how to get a hold of them and replace them with positive truths, which also closely link with our emotions, which, are very normal, positive and negative, but how to navigate those in a healthy way. And then finally, just touching on the spiritual component as well, where for some it's meditation or devotions or different sorts of things, prayer. I feel like I just wanted to say, I think that's a big part of this, is what connects all of us is our faith and how that carried us through our childhoods and trauma. And again, just wanting to let listeners know that there is healing. God made our body to heal, and there's services and supports. So I just want to, again, offer any, help that I can be. I know Shalina and Kay and others that are on fire for helping those in foster care and adoption, that you just reach out, because I feel like trauma is very isolating. It's makes you feel like you're the only one. And so I just want to take the shame out of it and really encourage you to get the help that's needed in order to live the abundant life.
Yes. A huge gold, not really nugget, but diamond of just what she said right there. Don't be ashamed, because we know, Dusty, myself, the people we're connected with, Dr. Kaiser, we all know we've been there as well in, one way or the other, whether we were foster alum like myself, adopted alum like Dr. Kaiser. For Dusty, it was her sister. But regardless of what area you stand in as a listener, don't feel ashamed anymore, especially here on this platform. We want to celebrate you. We want to embrace you and encourage you to know that don't ever feel ashamed here. on this platform from your past, what you may be currently going through, and anything that we have no control over as it relates to a potential future. We are here for you to support you right where you are. And like Dusty said, feel free to reach out if you don't feel you could talk to your neighbor or your parents or really anybody. Just know that we're here to support you, especially dustystark.com. I'm going to keep saying that. It's also in our comment section. Reach out, book an appointment, and I know Dusty will meet you right where you are. All right, Dusty, I just thank you for being my returning guest. You are a phenomenal leader.
Thank you,
You
Shalina.
and Mr.
Yeah.
Dwayne Stark. Once again, I will keep rooting for this couple to just be able to continue to have more doors open on their behalf because they are not only making strides with their family. Once again, you are foster and adoptive parents. Their children are phenomenal. Dusty has that information on her Facebook page, but she can also share. If you reach out to her, what she can. But if you want to support her family strides, what they're doing, their family, their communities, reach out, reach out, reach out, and connect with them. Dusty, thank you for being my guest today.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And listeners, if you enjoyed today's content, please leave a comment and a message. If you are watching the replay, leave a comment and a message as well. We'll get that over to Dusty for her to look at and also enjoy. And as always, being fostered, adopted, orphaned, or marginalized simply means you're gracefully chosen. And even if you don't come from any of that, it just means you have purpose. All right. Take care.